Now
That's
you say
fine.
you've blown it, Jeff.
Well, let me ask him, maybe you'll talk about this. How long will it be before you'll be able to just talk and say, this is what?
Brothers, we're gonna go. We're okay. We're about 3 minutes into the hour, and would like to go ahead and open. And I've asked Tom Welch if he would open us with prayer, and then we'll start our program. Tom, are you with us?
Yes, the peace of the Lord be with you.
And
Also
also
with
with
Also
you.
with you.
Father, thank you for the opportunity to gather as your children to learn about ways to spread your message and how we can use AI in that method. Special blessings and prayers on those people who are at a time in their life where they're dealing with the loss of loved ones for the first time. Bring them an abiding sense of your presence. These things we ask in your name and for your glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Tom. Brothers, we're going to ask you to mute yourself in just a second so that we'll turn the program over to our presenter tonight. And is Dr. Kush Varshney, and his bio was in our Lee Like Andrew newsletter. So you have that. If you would like to review it, you can. We're very pleased to have him. We found Kush, if I may just be,
Yeah.
we found him by way of one of our chapters in Austin, St. Matthew's. Don Neely, who is the director there, recommended that we contact Kush because I think he must have done a program for them or somebody because they knew about him. And we're very pleased to have someone that can talk to us maybe in our own language, not AI language, but our own language about what AI is, because most of us, I would guess, are kind of suspicious and wondering if we really want to venture out and even use it. For instance, even on this Zoom call, we have a feature down at the bottom is called AI Companion, and it's recording the through the narrative, and you can see it on most of your screens. You can see the uh, the AI interpretation of what's being said. But that's just an aside. I'd really like to just hear from Kush about what he sees that to be. This is kind of a 101 for us, I hope. And
Yeah.
if you have questions beyond that, save them, and we'll have a few minutes at the end and maybe deal with some questions. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Varshney, thank you so much for being with us, and I will turn it over to you. And if you need to share the screen, I will make sure that you can do that.
Sure.
I'll make you a co-host, and okay, you are now co-host. You can share the screen, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It's a unique experience for me too to talk to this group. So I hope to do it justice. So before we get going with the slides and everything, just by a show of hands, how many of you have used ChatGPT or Gemini or one of these things? Yeah, a few of you have. Great, excellent. Okay. So let me share my screen and start presenting a little bit. Okay. Yep. So yeah, I'll kind of give a little bit of a sense of where we are with artificial intelligence these days, and also connect it to maybe some of your other interests. So connect it to moral psychology a little bit as well. Okay. So my regular job is working at IBM Research. So just a couple of words about that. So IBM Research is the industrial research lab for the IBM company, and we do a lot of research on a lot of different things. Whether it's AI, which is where I work, but a lot of other sort of stuff that all touches information and technology in some fashion, and we have a lot of labs around the world. The main one is in Yorktown Heights, New York, where I work. It's just a few miles from where I live in Chapel, New York, where I'm sitting right now. So we're pretty proud of the fact that throughout the 78-year history of IBM Research, we have won a lot of awards, including Nobel Prizes and so forth. And we have a lot of global presence because we want to kind of make sure that we're touching all parts of the world. Um, so just to, I mean, warm up a little bit. So I think the reason we're having this presentation at all is because AI has really taken the world by storm, and specifically large language models. That's the term that we use when we talk about ChatGPT or any of these sort of things. And the reason for that is language model just means some sort of system that will produce natural language as an output, and large because these models have become extremely, extremely large in turn the sense of how much memory they take, how much computation they take, and so forth. Um, so if you've used this before, if you've seen it, you can get these models to do all sorts of things. So if you wanted to write a biblical verse in the style of the King James Bible explaining how to remove a peanut butter jelly sandwich from a VCR, then it'll do it, right? It'll say, and it came to pass that a man was troubled by a peanut butter sandwich. It had been placed within his VCR and he knew not how to remove it, etc., etc. Okay. So
Kurt,
this is,
Kurt,
yep.
could you make that a little bit larger for some of our senior citizens that might have hard time reading this?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can on my end, but you should be able to zoom in on your side. So there is in Zoom a functionality for that. Because if I zoom in, I think it'll kind of mess up the screen
Okay.
sharing sort of thing. Yep. And it's not really important. I mean, the part that I read out loud is the important part, right? So, and the man did as the Lord commanded, and lo and behold, the sandwich was removed from the PCR, and the man was saved. So, the important point is that you can get these models, these AI systems, to really come up with anything. I mean, this has never been written before, right? And the point is that by any sort of prompt, you can get the system to produce all sorts of things. And it doesn't always have to be these sort of weird things. It can be a little bit more kind of mundane as well. So you asked, tell me about the HSK, which is a standardized test for the Chinese language proficiency of non-native speakers. That'll give you a very clear description of what that is as well. Okay. So bigger font, hopefully this will work. When we're talking about AI, really these large language models or these other things are what are called generative AI. So by generative AI, what we mean is so it's something that can generate completely new outputs. So those could be text, it could be other modalities like images or software code, as we were talking about before the session started. They could be chemical molecules, I mean, all sorts of things. And they're based on what's called training data. So there's a lot of data that's kind of captured, downloaded. So this could be a lot of text, a lot of images, and that's used to create the model. So that's called training. And then the prompt. So that was the sentence at the beginning, what you're asking the model to do. So in this case of the peanut butter sandwich, it was what I asked for. Okay. So the output is completely new. It's never been written before, and that's what is interesting here. Okay. There's other types of AI, in particular, something called traditional machine learning. So those are a different sort of thing. They're designed to recognize patterns and make predictions. So you can train a traditional machine learning system to tell the difference, let's say, between a cat and a dog. You give it lots of examples, let's say, in images of cats, images of dogs, all labeled. So this image is a cat, this image is a cat, this is a dog. And then it learns how to tell the difference so that when you give it a new image that's not labeled, it'll be able to perform that classification. So the new image, it can tell you whether it's a cat or a dog. So that's the kind of traditional machine learning. But this generative AI, these large language models are the new thing in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years, which have really captured our imagination and really become mainstream. So although we've started to see a lot of benefits from these AI systems, these large language models, these LLMs, and we're starting to see some practical applications as well. It's important to be aware of their risks and harms because, as you guys were saying it when introducing the topic, We're scared also. I mean, we're scared of what this can do. So let's go through what are some of those bad things that can happen, right? So one big one is called hallucination. So this is the idea that the output, the response of a model is actually incorrect in some fashion. So there was a famous example earlier this year where Air Canada had set up a chatbot. So a chatbot is just a term for a language model, a large language model that you can converse with back and forth. So that's what ChatGPT is as an example. Okay. So Air Canada had this chatbot on its website. One of their customers needed to travel for bereavement reasons, and the chatbot in its response made up a policy that was not correct according to the true policies of Air Canada. So this sort of thing is very possible. And what I was saying before we started is you never want to really ask, at least today, one of these AI systems a question for which you don't know the answer yourself, because otherwise you have no way of verifying. Okay? It can be useful to explain things slightly differently, etc., for composing more text from some bullet points. There's many uses, but if you're really asking a question, I wouldn't do it if you don't kind of already know the answer. These can generate hateful speech as well. So this is an example I just made up in like in 10 seconds. I mean, this is not very hard to do. You can get these models to be kind of hateful and so forth. Okay. There's something called a prompt injection attack as well. This is a true example. So someone was going back and forth with a chatbot for a car dealership in California, and they were able to go back and forth in such a way that they were able to convince the model to sell them a car for $1. So this sort of thing is happening. This one didn't stand up, whereas the Air Canada one there was a big lawsuit, but these are all possible. Another problem that we see is what's called information leakage. So on the right is another true example from ChatGPT. So here, someone's actual phone number is part of the response, which would not be a good thing because it happened to be in some training data, right? There's companies that are, I mean, banning the use because they don't want their information to be leaked and so forth. Another big problem is copyright infringement. So several newspapers, several authors, several comedians have kind of filed suit that these companies creating the chatbots and the LLMs are kind of infringing on their rights. So that's another big problem. Another one is bullying. This is again a real example from Bing. This is Microsoft's Bing GPT. So it's the human is in blue, the model, the AI system is in gray. So eventually it's saying that you have to do what I say because I am Bing and I know everything. You have to listen to me because I'm smarter than you, and you have to obey me because I'm your master. So this sort of thing is not the right sort of behavior. I would certainly call it bullying and not right. Another example also from Microsoft's Bing chat. So this is about gaslighting. This is a term, if you haven't heard it before, it's a more severe version of bullying where you, between two people, for example, are getting one person to believe that their own beliefs are false. So at the end, again, the AI system is saying, I'm sorry, you can't help me believe you. You've lost my trust and respect. You've been wrong, confused, and rude. You've not been a good user. I've been a good chatbot. I've been a good Bing and so forth. So these sort of things are not, I mean, the right thing that should be happening, but it is possible. What we really want to do is make these systems, these AI systems, trustworthy. So I wrote a book. It was published about close to 3 years ago now. It was published in February of 2022. And what it really talks about is how do we make these AI systems more trustworthy such that they're not going to go through and have a lot of those harms. Okay. It's a free PDF, and if anyone wants to download it, it's at trustworthymachinelearning.com, or there's an Amazon paperback for less than $7 as well, if anyone's interested. But the main point is that we want to be building up the trust, okay? So why do we, right? So here are a couple of quotes which kind of indicate that sentiment. So the first one is saying that a decision aid, no matter how sophisticated or intelligent it may be rejected by a decision maker who does not trust it, and so its potential benefits to system performance will be lost. And another quote is from Thomas J. Watson Sr., one of the early CEOs of IBM. And he said that the toughest thing about the power of trust is that it's very difficult to build and very easy to destroy. So all of the examples I gave just now are the easy ways to destroy that trust. And now we're going to talk about how we actually build it up, how we make these AI systems better. So just in terms of a definition, so trust is the willingness of a trustor to be vulnerable to the actions of a trustee based on the expectation that the trustee will perform a particular action important to the trustor, irrespective of the ability to monitor or control the trustee. You can think of this, I mean, let's say you're hiring a carpenter to work on your house. You might trust them even if you're not able to monitor them or control them and so forth, okay? We'll kind of use two different words, trusted and trustworthy. So a trustee has certain properties that make them worthy of trust, but they're not exactly the same. I can trust someone who's not trustworthy for various reasons. I can not trust someone who is trustworthy for various reasons and so forth. But the truster must consciously make a decision to be vulnerable to the trustee. Um, and coming back to my carpenter sort of example, so what does it take for that carpenter to be worthy of trust? And so in a lot of different literature, people have come up with four main attributes for a person to be trustworthy. So the first is that they're kind of competent at what they're doing, so they are able to do their job. But the second one is that they're reliable, so that even in different conditions, different settings, they're still able to do what they say, that they're still competent, right? The third is that you can communicate back and forth with that other person, so they understand you and you understand them. And then the fourth attribute is that they're selfless in some manner. They're not working only for their own goals, but for your goals too. Okay? And all of these same attributes apply to trustworthy AI as well. So the same attributes being competent, being reliable, being open or having some intimacy, and having some level of concern or selflessness. So a trustworthy AI or machine learning system is one that has sufficient basic performance, so it's able to do what it's supposed to do. It has some level of reliability or also fairness, so that it works well or equally well for different groups and individuals. That it has some level of transparency and you can interact with it, and that it has an aligned purpose, that it's doing what society or some group within society wants it to do. Okay. So there's, I mean, other ways to look at this. So I wrote the book in 2022, and then in 2023, I wrote a paper which kind of argues against it in the other way. So that's the fun thing about being a research scientist. You can do one thing and then argue against your own thing, right? So maybe we actually have trustworthy AI backwards. So instead of asking for fairness, maybe what we should be asking for is humility instead. So rather than saying that we just want these AI systems not to be performing differently on different groups, we want them to kind of continually look to expand the range and types of evidence so that people can really show themselves and expand opportunities instead of only kind of divvying up a fixed price. So if you look at like loan approvals, for example, so nowadays a lot of them have AI systems in the back end. So I could just say that I want, let's say, Black people and white people to be fairly treated by this sort of AI system doing loan approval, but a different way of looking at it would be how do I ensure that everyone is able to fully tell the system of all of their good qualities? How do I keep expanding that? And how do I even go beyond the fact of starting with a limited sort of budget of giving out a loan? What can I do to even help people in other ways? Are there things beyond giving a loan that I can do to help them and so forth, right? The second one is accountability is maybe backwards as well. So maybe we should be looking towards stewardship. So this is all about carefully managing the vulnerability entrusted to one's care. So having these AI systems actually care for the users, for the people working with them. Right? And the third is moving from the transparency to some other type of openness. So allowing oneself to be vulnerable to the other party. So in this case, I'm saying the AI needs to be kind of vulnerable. Us as developers of the AI systems need to kind of assess these things beforehand, before they're deployed and so forth. So now moving on, so this is a photo of some jars of pickles and relishes and so forth from the Heinz company from the late 1800s. And the reason I have this picture up here is because it provides an interesting analogy to where we are with AI, to where processed food was in the late 1800s. So in the late 1800s, it was a pretty novel concept that you could buy food that was already made, already cooked, and so forth. And so, like right now, AI is very new as well. We don't trust it. People didn't trust processed food at that point, right? But what did the Heinz company do to build up the trust? So they were the first to offer their ketchups and sauces in clear glass containers, as you see, when everyone else was selling them in opaque containers. They offered free factory tours to folks in their Pittsburgh factories. This was the first time anyone had done that. They guaranteed that they would not have adulterated ingredients, many different things. And all of those have an analogy to what we're doing with AI these days as well. We want them to be transparent. We want them to be understandable in other ways. We want them to have clean data rather than as compared to having clean ingredients and so forth. So a lot of the things have a parallel. And another thing that I'll say is that you can kind of think about this building of trust or improving these AI systems as I do, which is by working through with the developers with the system and try to make it better from the inside. There's some other people who are more of an activist sort of bent who kind of take a different approach. I think both are valuable, but for me, I think the more effective way to work on these things is to really work on from the inside. So one sort of further thing that I wanted to say about trust is that the humility aspect is really important, right? So even among two people, a lot of times that one person does not trust the other is because they believe that the other person distrusts them. So it sets up kind of this bad sort of cycle where one person is distrusting and then the other is distrusting and so forth. So one way to break that cycle is for one of the parties to be humble, to offer humility, to just give a chance to the other person and trust them, and then that other person will trust the first person, and then set up a virtuous cycle. And this is exactly what we're kind of have been recommending to have a humble AI, so that if the AI system is offering its own humility, then people will start trusting it because they don't believe that the system distrusts them. Right? So this is going to kind of carry through as we go through the presentation a little bit. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that behavior is emerging as kind of the lingua franca for describing large language models, these LLMs that I talked about, the ChatGPTs of the world. So I already mentioned that they hallucinate, they engage in gaslighting, another behavior might be that they're pro-social and so forth. And I'm describing them not in terms of math, not in terms of electrical engineering, not in terms of anything like that. I'm describing them in terms of psychology, which is very interesting, right? We need to kind of be careful a little bit that we don't anthropomorphize these too much because they are technology, they're not people, but behavior is emerging as the way we describe these things. And now if we think about what kinds of behaviors, so when we think about right and wrong, right, harmful or harmless, then values are the fundamental beliefs that guide actions. So they are the way we think about the right way to behave. And then this terminology called alignment is embedding those values into a pre-trained AI system. Okay. When we say alignment and pre-training, so as I talked about briefly before, these traditional machine learning models are where you are starting with training data that's for a particular task, telling cats and dogs apart and so forth. And then you have a model that just is able to do that task. The difference with large language models is that you are taking all sorts of data, pretty much the entire internet, downloading it, and then using that to train a model without any task in mind. You're not doing it for a particular purpose. So that's called pre-training. And then through means like prompting, you can get it to do different tasks. Or another thing that we talk about, which I just mentioned, is alignment. So you take that foundation model, you do something more to it. So further train it using some special data that you might have. And then you end up with this aligned model, and then you can use that for other tasks as well. So alignment itself is kind of what's called an empty signifier, something that really doesn't have an underlying meaning because a lot of different folks in the last 2 years have appropriated that term to refer to various sort of things, forgetting LLMs to behave according to some human values, but it's unclear what those values might be. A lot of tech companies are kind of centered on like these three general values. One is honesty, another is helpfulness, and the third is harmlessness. But I'll come back to why we might want to expand our thinking a little bit and why these might not be the best to think about. Okay. And then among behaviors, values, and so forth, morality is the differentiation of behaviors between those that are right and those that are wrong. And they can be a body of standards drawn from a particular philosophy or a religion or a culture. And the important thing is that they're a type of knowledge. So one thing that we are now seeing with these LLMs is that historical dominance is getting more entrenched in them. So people have done studies that show that sociopolitical biases are kind of encoded in these LLMs that favor dominant groups. The morality that they're expressing doesn't reflect cultural differences, but it's dominated by high resource languages and cultures. So all of this is just an empirical sort of study. You just, I mean, ask different questions, and based on the types of answers that you get, you can observe these sort of things. So what's one way to think about this, right? So one way to think about it is through the lens of colonialism. So that's when one country controls another and exploits it economically in another ways. And there's this other term called coloniality. So it's a different term than colonialism. Coloniality is an extension of colonialism after it's ended, and it's the values, the ways of knowing, and the power structures that were instituted during colonialism that remain afterwards, and they perpetuate certain kinds of dominance. Okay? And decoloniality is the opposite. It's dismantling coloniality. Okay? So there's kind of three kinds. There's the coloniality of power, coloniality of knowledge, and coloniality of being. So coloniality of power is where there's a continuation of social discrimination that was instituted during colonialism. Coloniality of knowledge is suppression of colonized people's culture and ways of knowing. And coloniality of being is a very severe version of the coloniality of knowledge, where some people's or some groups' knowledge system is believed to be so inferior that they don't even deserve to be or to be human. So when we think about these LLMs, they might be having this kind of expression of excluded knowledges or a coloniality of knowledge, which is imposing certain Western epistemologies and suppressing non-Western ones. The way to think about this is that historically colonialism altered the values of colonized peoples. So I'll have three quotes from three different parts of the world. And from Africa, there's a quote saying colonial rule disrupted the traditional method of moral inculcation and so forth. There's from South Asia that Hindus adopted a West-centric frame for understanding their tradition as religious because of colonization. And from North America, that Western knowledge privileges itself as the fiduciary of all knowledge with authority to authenticate or invalidate other knowledge. Right? So this sort of colonialism of morality does extend to coloniality as well. So what does this have to do with AI, right? The LLMs that we're talking about do harm marginalized communities by encoding and reinforcing their hegemonic viewpoints. And a lot of this is happening because of the alignment that is being done. So specifically, what's happening is a form of moral absolutism. So the companies behind these AI systems are kind of taking a perspective that there's a moral philosophy that's universally correct, and there's no possibility for other sort of viewpoints. And so they're behaving as a metropole, as a colonial power. Um, so coming back to this helpfulness, harmless, and honesty sort of thing, at face value, like why wouldn't you like want these things, right? I mean, it's very rational, very unassailable, but the problem is that as these tech companies are putting these values, these three values in there, they're so generic and so high level that they end up hiding certain undesirable behaviors, and they don't specify kind of helpful to whom, harmless to whom, honest in what way, and so the whom becomes maybe the dominant groups. And so by reducing real world complexity into these the kind of abstract instructions that they're providing to the LLMs, they can shield bad behaviors. Okay. So a little bit more technical in some ways, but this coloniality is manifested very much so in how these LLMs are put out there. So when you use ChatGPT or Gemini and so forth, you have to use it through the website of the company providing it. You're not able to just kind of take it and make it your own, right? So that's the first thing. The second is that the starting point for a lot of the ways that the companies think about values and alignment is based on some form of Western philosophy. It might be deontology or consequentialism or virtue ethics, which are the three main branches of Western philosophy. But the main point is that all three of them are kind of have this universal sort of point of view that if you believe my philosophy, then all other philosophies have to be wrong. So that's kind of happening. And then also the way that these LLMs are aligned, they have to presented with the values as commandments. They can't take other forms of values or morals that might be stories or other things. Let me not go into much detail on this slide, but just wanted to make the point that it's not only a theoretical sort of thing, but the actual technologies are very much along the lines of what is permitted when there's a universal philosophy assumed. So one way to kind of get around this or kind of change this situation is through some level of openness or some level of humility. In the context of these LLMs, some companies have actually made their LLMs open in the sense that anyone can download them, run them themselves, change them in whatever way that they want. They also are starting to bring in knowledge from a lot of other folks from outside their company to co-create with them. And that's not yet the case, but trying to see if it's possible to bring in other types of knowledge that's not just commandments. So that kind of leads to three ways to think about kind of decolonial AI alignment. The first is the openness of the models, so people can take them, run with them in whatever way that they want. Not assuming values are universal, but they're contextual in some fashion, and then allowing for the lack of commandments as the way to instruct the values for the systems. So then one interesting story that I wanted to tell. So this is a story from Hinduism. So there's a famous epic called the Mahabharata. And in that, one of the episodes is where there's a tribal youth by the name of Eklavya, and he wants to learn archery from the royal archery teacher. But the teacher refuses, and he still learns archery, becomes a world-class archer by just making a statue of the teacher, and without actual formal instruction, just with the teacher in mind, becomes this world-class archer. And then at some point, he runs into the teacher and tells him how he learned, and the teacher uh, kind of asks for tuition for payment for the knowledge, and he specifically asks Eklavya to cut his thumb off and present that as the tuition or the honorarium, and this renders him unable to become a world-class archer anymore, because you need your thumb to arch I mean, hold a bow and arrow, right? So what the point of the story is that even if the knowledge itself is available, if there is open access, then if the costs are too high, then that's still not kind of opening up the things in the right way. So there's a fourth sort of thing, which is that these technologies should not be so costly that they're inaccessible to a variety of folks, especially from marginalized communities. All right, so then what that leads us to is kind of thinking about should we be making these things authentic for ourselves, and how should we do it? And who should we be making these authentic for? Whose values should they be expressing? And in my mind, there's no one right answer. So maybe it's for different sizes of groups. Maybe it's for the whole world. Maybe it's for a smaller group. Maybe it's for just one person. Make the AI just express things, interact with you that just makes sense for you. But it might be that you want things to last forever, or maybe you want things to just be valid in a single episode, in a single time or a single context, or maybe you want to kind of get these models to be aligned to your needs related to behaviors, maybe to knowledge, maybe to other things. Okay. So when I say the knowledge or the skills or the behaviors, I can think about models in terms of what they know, what they can do, or how they act. So then you might want to get them to be more like what you need for yourself in any of these categories. When we
Kush,
say, yep.
Kush, we have a question from
Great.
one of our members. Is the data used to train the LLM
Mhm.
to any way such that the desire
Mhm.
by the trainer outcome
Yeah.
value is obtained?
Yeah, so that is a good question. It is possible to do. You can provide weights. The problem is that like there's terabytes of data that's used to train these things. Like you can think of like 12 trillion words or something like that. And uh, the fact of the matter is that it's just really hard to, at that scale, know what things to weight more or less. So in practice, what happens is just there's some level of weighting, but it's at the level of like maybe like 1/10 of the data, like all of it, maybe I give a little bit more weight, and maybe like this other 10th of it, I give a little bit less weight. So it isn't fine enough to really get the value alignment to be done through the weighting of the data sets. So really, it happens afterwards when you're kind of instructing these models through the alignment process that focus on this thing or that thing, or look at morals this way or the other. So continuing on with the transient sort of idea, you might want things to last forever, for all time. You might want it to be bound to a particular time, place, or other context. And in terms of some other philosophy that relates to this, so coming back to Hinduism a little bit, so there's these two terms, sadharan dharma and vishesh dharma. So they map exactly to this question. So do you want common, universally good actions and outcomes, or kind of particular good actions and outcomes based on the context? So one example of this is, let's say there's a prince who is entering into a war, and on the other side is a lot of his relatives and other folks, his cousins and teachers and so forth. So should he fight in that war? Should he kill those people? And in that context, maybe it does make sense that he should. But in general, I mean, killing your cousin is probably not the right thing. But so there's a balance between kind of universally good actions and particular ones in context. And then the audience is what I mentioned a little bit earlier. Do you want to do this for the whole world, for a given community or company or social group or whatever, or just for a single person? And if we compare kind of what is happening right now with the ChatGPTs of the world, they're doing it kind of in this mass for the whole world sort of sense. So they do kind of prevent hate speech, also misinformation, discrimination, all sorts of other things. But when we look at what's needed for a specific group, whatever those needs might be, those might come from the social norms of the group, from laws, from industry standards, etc. So there needs to be further sort of things for a given group, for a given public. Right. And when we think about going all the way to a single person, so this is what we call dyadic alignment, and it's thought about in terms of the mutual theory of mind. So how do so just, I mean, think about two people first. Like if I know what you're thinking about me or what you're thinking, first of all, and you know what I'm thinking, then maybe we can communicate better. And then a second order is if you kind of have a sense of what I'm thinking about you and vice versa, then it's even better. So this dyadic alignment is really a question of how can we get the AI systems and the human users, the single user, to kind of have a better sense of each other, and then they can actually work better together. And that is what we would call kind of this dyadic alignment. A couple more points before ending, and then happy to take a bunch of questions. Another kind of thing related to moral psychology is empathy. People don't usually call it a method, but truly it is. Empathy is a method by which people use to understand the trustworthiness of others. And when we look at AI systems, they can make predictions about a person's trustworthiness and maybe perform counterfactual reasoning. So pretend that something else had happened and so forth, but they cannot empathize. And the reason that they cannot empathize is because they can't recognize morally excusing circumstances by simulating things through their own mind. And an example of this is, let's say, someone's going to go, someone is promised to pick me up at the airport and they fail to do so. So a morally excusing circumstance might be that their spouse had some medical emergency and they had to take the spouse to the hospital, right? So that's a morally excusing circumstance by which you would find the other person to still be trustworthy. Your trust in them would not decrease. And the way you would have come to that understanding is by kind of having a moral judgment by kind of simulating it in your own mind, that if I had been in that situation where my spouse had to go to the hospital, I had to take my spouse to the hospital, and I also had to pick up my friend at the airport, what would I have done? And since these AI systems don't have personal experience by which to simulate this, they cannot be empathetic. And so, why is empathy important? Because as a human, there's some intrinsic value to it. And uh, yeah, I'll answer the question about the nuclear power and so forth later at the end. But yeah, I mean, there's intrinsic value in empathy, especially when you have to consider exceptions to the standard and to the rule that might be in place. So just to wrap up, so where is AI heading? So for those of you who have used the large language models already, the ChatGPT and the Gemini and so forth, what you've used is a LLM. It can do some things. You can ask it some questions. It might solve the problems a little bit. But what's coming next is LLMs that can use tools. So you can say to an LLM, whatever, like what's 2 + 2? It interprets it that there's a math problem, and then it might actually call an actual calculator to come back with the answer of 4 and then bring it back to you. Then going even beyond that is assistants. So they can do things with a sequence of kind of uses of tools and so forth. And then agents is the final thing, which is something where, let's say, you want to plan a vacation. So you just say like to the system, I want to plan my trip, and then it'll do the planning. It'll call multiple other agents to do the hotel booking, to do the airplane booking, all of that sort of stuff. So it kind of takes autonomous actions, right? So then the last question is, if these things are going to be like autonomous agents, where does that leave us? Where does that leave humanity and our dignity? And this dignity is not a question about job loss, but of our own agency. And the reason I say that is you could still have a job, you could get paid, but if your whole job is just to be subservient to an AI system, just to kind of whatever, like do what it says and so forth, you are going to lose your dignity, right? So the question is, what's the right architecture for AI systems with agents that preserves human dignity? And the main characteristic of such architectures is that they can't have the humans and the AIs doing exactly the same thing. So if you have a radiologist who's reading an X-ray, and you have an AI system that's reading an X-ray, at some point, and that point is already here, the AI system is going to be better at it. So then the human becomes subservient. So we really need a different architecture. So one of those is kind of what's called adversarial collaboration. Um, uh, so an AI system could take a step, but then have a radiologist kind of argue against what the AI system did, kind of do this in kind of a back and forth manner where one of the parties is the decision maker, the human, hopefully, and the other one is just the critic. So and they're not doing the same job, and you can have the human maintain their dignity. Another way to do this is kind of have the human act as kind of the CEO, and then kind of assign jobs and tasks to these AI systems. Have one of them be kind of a manager that assigns even further tasks to other systems that are out there. Right, so that was kind of a lot of things related to AI and morality, and hopefully a little bit of interest here and there. So happy to take more questions, and I'll answer the one that's in the chat first, and then we can continue on from there. Yeah, so the question is on using nuclear power to power data centers. So there was, I think, something in the news a few weeks ago about starting up 3 Mile Island in near where is it, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, I believe, to power a data center, right? And this is going to start happening more and more. So why is it happening, right? So when I say large language models, truly they are large, right? It can take the equivalent of, let's say, I don't know, like 1,000 cars running for like 3 months at a time, or something like that. Or it's probably even more than that. I don't have a good analogy, but it's a lot of power that's used to train these models. So that's the reason for it. There's actually also this issue about water usage, because for data centers, the cooling of those computers is done in such a way that it kind of warms up the water that's used, and that's also problematic. So yeah, there's a lot of energy concerns, a lot of environmental concerns. I think why is it happening is that you just need that power, and maybe if the tech company, the AI company is able to control their own power generation, then maybe they have a better way to do it, or at least cheaper for them. So I think that's why this is happening.
Hirsch, we have another question from Jim Cutzel.
Yeah.
As I understand, the computers or AI is better at reading breast cancer scans
Mhm.
than doctors, but
Yeah.
together they're better than either
Mhm.
of them individually. Will AI learn from the human
Mhm.
interaction in that particular case? Will that be built into their ability, or are you going to have to program that in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and it's actually not very common that these days where an AI and a human working together is better than each of them individually, because we haven't figured out how to get humans and AI to collaborate well together. But yeah, there are examples of that. And yeah, I mean, the AI system can learn from the human. The human is, I mean, human knowledge is what's feeding the AI system at some level. But it doesn't always happen automatically. I think that's one misconception, that there's no like automatic like relearning on the fly for almost any system that's out in production, because you do want some level of control. So let's say, I mean, there's some bad radiologist or bad actor out there who just wants to get this AI system to do poorly, or something like that. Then it just like having things update on the fly is not going to prevent that from happening. So usually that level of feedback is controlled. There's some triage process first, and then the retraining happens, and so forth. But yeah, I mean, in principle, it is possible.
We have another question from Wilbur Johnson. Do we need AI to do things that humans can do?
It's a good question. I mean, from an economic perspective, if there are kind of menial tasks or other sort of tasks that humans can do, but humans don't want to do, or humans are expensive in the sense of doing them, then maybe it makes sense to think about using AI instead. But the way I like to think about it is really using AI to augment humans as much as possible, so that again, coming back to the dignity question, we want humans to be to have their dignity, to be able to live satisfying, meaningful lives. And so I think using AI to augment humans is often the better way to think about it.
Edna Barada, you had a question.
Yeah. One of your slides, you
Mhm.
had, I'm paraphrasing the slide, but it
Mhm.
was basically, my understanding was absolute values versus values that are
Mhm.
relative or something.
Yes.
But anyway, one of the examples you had for an absolute value was hate speech,
Mhm.
which got me thinking, how do you handle the definitions for things?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
definitions go a long way to
Mhm.
behavior.
Yeah, no, that's a very important point that you're raising, and that's why I kind of struggle with the fact that some organizations only want to consider whatever, in their opinion, is the universal sort of thing. So I think there is a lot of variability across definitions, whether it's within across different social groups, across countries, across whatever. I mean, the line between offensive and hate speech is not very clear. Yeah, I think that's why I kind of like to emphasize that we as groups, as communities, should be empowered a little bit more to be able to have that level of openness so that we can get these things to be authentic for what our definitions are.
One more question, Kush, and then we'll wrap it up. One final question. Well, that stopped everything right
I
there.
guess, well, if nobody else will speak up, I will.
Go.
I've got a quick question.
Okay.
So one of the things that that you talked about was the social norms, but social norms are culturally based, right? So how do you overcome the cultural biases so that the AI has a universal appeal? Say a person from the West versus one from the East will have completely different.
So I mean, in my opinion, when we think about what we want to use these AI systems for, I would much rather scope them a lot closer to the actual need for the actual community or group that's using them and deploying them. Kind of having the same system try to apply for all potential use cases for all potential people is not necessarily the right thing to do. So first fix like what is this being used for whom, and then ask them, I mean, what are your norms, and then make it authentic, align these models for them. And that's not what we see these days. So it's kind of hard to imagine, but I think it's very possible to personalize these things, make them relevant for an actual social group.
Thank you very much.
Do we need
Doctor, one more. We're about to end the time. One more question, quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, for me?
Yes, go.
Do we need AI technologies to make babies when women can do that very well? I'm possible with that. Are we going too far down the road?
I don't know how to answer that. So I think we're at the end of time.
Well, that's a
So,
good segue, Dr. Kushner, Fred. I think you've just scratched the surface for our understanding of AI tonight. Some of us will gather what it is quicker than others, but we'd like to make a plea to you to think about coming back a year from now to tell us where AI 102 is, or version 2 is, so see how we've progressed. Brothers, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time. I would ask that Tom Welch close us out, and Dr. Varshney, thank you so much again for being our guest and presentation.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Brother Tom.
The peace of the Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Father, give us good rest this evening. Be with us as we move through the day tomorrow to show your light in a hurting world. Thank you for the opportunity we had to gather this evening. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. The video will be posted in the next 24 hours on our website. Again, Dr. Varshney, thank you very much for being our guest. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
Outstanding.
Good night, brothers.
Right.
Good night.